Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 24th day of February, 2025. And as we begin a new week, we have a number of stories to bring to you that, as we see many times here on Breaking News, they don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but we're going to tell you what's going on anyway and try and make some sense of it. Now, what we do know is that we're moving closer and closer to the time of the end, the second coming of Jesus Christ, the events that will take place that precede it, as so many things are falling into place that are setting the stage for this. And it's remarkable what we see here every day. But there's also some days where things take place where you kind of scratch your head. And this is one of these days. So let's explain what's going on, okay? All right. Yesterday, we thought, based on Hamas's continued breaking of the agreement with Israel, every single time they have a hostage exchange, they do something to break the agreement, it seems, that Israel is going to demand more living hostages to be released before the 600 prisoners slated to be released Saturday were held back. In other words, Israel said, because of the continual breaking of the rules here, which you've done, of giving us the wrong body there at the mother of the Babas children there, Cheryl, and just on and on, making a huge ceremony and a circus of this hostage exchange and humiliating Israel. We're not going to put up with that anymore. And so here's the deal. We've got 600 prisoners we were supposed to release on Saturday. We're not going to do it until you give us some living hostages now, not just dead bodies, so we can go forward and look like, wow, Israel's really growing a spine now. The first time they've demanded something a little bit different. Well, sorry, that's not the case. Here's what's going on. First of all, let's go through the whole story here and put it in perspective. Number one, Netanyahu, this is from yesterday, delays prisoners' release until Hamas agrees to free more hostages. It's been decided to delay the release of the terrorists planned for yesterday until the release of the next hostages is ensured, the prime minister's office announced. Now, that sounded like the next hostages are we don't know how many. There's 60, I think something like 60, 63. They're unaccounted for. At least we're told at least probably 37 of them are dead. There's still a number of them that are still alive, 20 some odd, it seems. And so it seemed from that announcement, okay, here's what we're going to do. Instead of releasing these 600 Palestinian security prisoners, what we're going to do is make you give us some more living hostages for that because of your continual, refusal to keep with the agreement. That seemed to be what's going on. And then you have this story. The White House backed Israel's decision to delay releasing the 600 Palestinian security prisoners from the Times of Israel. The White House says it supports Israel's decision to delay releasing 600 Palestinian prisoners, citing the barbaric treatment of Israeli hostages by Hamas. Given Hamas's barbaric treatment of the hostages, including the hideous parade of the Babas children's coffins through the streets of Gaza, Israel's decision to delay the release of prisoners is an appropriate response. This is a statement from the National Security Council spokesman Brian Hughes. The president is prepared to support Israel whatever course of action it chooses against Hamas, he added. And Netanyahu said on Sunday, Israel will not release the 602 prisoners that have been slated for release Saturday until Hamas provides guarantees it will end the demeaning ceremonies it has held to make the transfer of Israeli hostages. Okay. Then we have this response from Hamas, headline number 3. It's a Reuters story. Hamas refuses further talks unless Israel release agreed prisoners. Hamas will not hold talks with Israel through mediators on any further steps in the fragile phased ceasefire agreement until Palestinian prisoners are released as agreed, group official Bassam Naim told Reuters on Sunday. Israel said on Sunday it was delaying the release of the hundreds of Palestinian prisoners it had planned to free the day before until Hamas met its conditions. All right. But Hamas says, all right, if that's going to be your attitude, then we're not going to talk to you anymore. There's no further talks. And so we're at a stalemate. And then we have this headline. A senior Hamas official says Hamas, this is really interesting. Hamas is dictating the terms to Israel. Sami Abu Zori, a senior official in Hamas, claims the terror group has enough leverage to force Israel to abide by the ceasefire agreement. He accused Prime Minister Netanyahu of undermining the ceasefire agreement in a way that could affect the fate of the hostages held by Hamas. Hamas, he claimed, is not in a position of defeat, but rather is setting the terms against Israel and possesses the leverage to compel Israel to uphold the agreement. He said Israel's decision to delay the release of a group of terrorist prisoners is a foolish and dangerous move and called upon the mediators to take responsibility and address the resulting crisis. He claimed that Hamas treats the Israeli hostages with respect and that their return to Israel involves no harm or humiliation, which of course is a complete lie. All right, and then we got this headline today. We're waiting to see Israel's response to all this. Israel demands, this is their demand, release of terrorists for immediate return of four slain hostages. All right. Jerusalem also demands assurances no public ceremonies will take place similar to those that occurred during the release of the Babas children and Odev Lishitz, the other man that was body of the man that was released. Israel has conveyed a proposal to mediators offering to release 620, get this, 620 Palestinian prisoners whose release has been delayed since Saturday in exchange for the immediate return of four slain hostages, an Israeli official told Ynet on Monday. As part of the proposal, Israel is demanding assurances that no public ceremonies will take place similar to those that occurred during the release of the Babas family children, Oded Lifshitz, the official said. Israel's decision to delay the prisoner release stemmed from such incidents, which it views as affront to national dignity, the official said. Our response to the murder, let's not forget that the murder of the Babas family will be powerful. We have not forgotten. Right now, we are focused on the mission of returning the fallen hostages, he said. Later Monday, Hamas officials said the terrorist group is insisting that Israel release the Palestinian prisoners before it hands over the four fallen hostages. All right, here's where we're at. Israel said, we're going to have a powerful response. In other words, we're going to demand you give us these four bodies now of the slain hostages as agreed to, which was supposed to be the last phase, supposed to be this happen next Saturday. And then we'll release the 600 prisoners that we were going to release Saturday. Now, what Israel is seemingly saying that would not release the 600 plus prisoners for any live hostages. Note that this is the key, not any live hostages, which we do know exist. As we mentioned yesterday, there were two hostages that were filmed in a car in Gaza that were forced to watch the release of the six other Israeli hostages on Saturday. And they were recorded and they were asked, well, what do you think of all this? What are you going to say? You're there, you're still a prisoner. And so the live hostages do exist, but Israel demands immediate release of dead bodies of the four remaining hostages, which will end the first phase of the deal, as well as demanding there'll be no public ceremony. Second phase means ending the. Okay. Now, here's been the Israeli response to this. One of the people I like reading his comments, his name's Larry Goldstein. He says, second phase means ending the war and excluding Hamas from any future government. In one word, impossible. Isn't that the truth? In two words, no chance. Hamas will never voluntarily relinquish power in Gaza. It must be forced to do so by military means. The war will indeed end, but only after Hamas is forced out, not by ending the war before Hamas leaves, not by doing things at the same time. It Wifkoff, and that's Trump's envoy, has another thought. He is completely mistaken. Here's another response. There we are. Trump gave us a perfect opportunity to demand the release of all the hostages at once, but Netanyahu insisted on continuing the slow surrender instead. So basically, what's going on is, all right, Israel's powerful response is this. All right, we want the bodies, this last group of four hostages released. Then we'll release the 600, terrorists there and prisoners and murderers. And that way we've showed a powerful response to what you did, to the fact that we now know that the Babas family was murdered 1 month after taken captive. They were brutally murdered, all three of them, the mother and the two children. They have evidence of that. And our powerful response is demanding four dead bodies be released before these 600 people are released to you. Now, the last hostage release we didn't get into, but there's one of the prisoners that was released. Listen to this. He showed up in Gaza, by the way. He had been guilty and found guilty of 45 Israeli murders. 45. Israel didn't have the death penalty, had life in prison. He was released. And so people like this are being released and not any live hostages now. And so that's Israel's powerful response. So let's see what happened next. It seems like the situation is going to drag on forever. There's no way Hamas will voluntarily leave Gaza. They must be defeated militarily, as Larry Goldstein said, and he's exactly right. Otherwise, they're winners in the entire fiasco here. It just doesn't make sense. Now, I mentioned the other day I'm going to have a very interesting meeting later today with two of the people I trust the most with respect to what's going on in the Middle East. David Tall, who is former tank commander in Israel, who is our usual guide when we do the tours over there. Bible believing Christian Messianic Jew is doing fabulous things with the Christian ministry there. And then, of course, our friend Nader, who is an Iranian Christian who came over to the U.S. after he escaped Iran as a leaving Islam, became an atheist, became a Bible believing Christian. He works with the underground churches there. He also works with special forces. And so we're going to get together and talk about all this. I asked David the other day about some of the things Israel's doing. Why do they do this? Doesn't make sense. He says, first of all, Don, we're Jews. We don't make sense a lot of the time. Well, I'll ask him about this and why this response when you have the president of the United States. This is what one of the people said. You got Trump that said, do whatever you do. If it's up, let them hell to pay, demand all the hostages be released now, or just let them have it once and for all. And yet they've decided not to go that way. And so we'll see what takes place. So anyway, I'll give a report back tomorrow of what we talked about. What I can say about half the stuff that Nodder tells me I can't repeat because it's, highly secretive. He tells me because he knows I got to tell anybody. But still, it's really interesting to get the insight there. Now, the bottom line is what we'll come to. I'm going to tell you this right now is the real issue. It's not really Gaza or Lebanon, it's Iran. You've got to get Iran out of the picture because they're the ones financing this, are the ones that are behind all of this. And their nuclear program needs to be taken care of. They need to be put in a secondary position, which we know they will from the Bible, because when the last days invasion of Israel takes place, according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, it's not Iran invading, it's Russia invading. Iran is a surrogate along with Russia. They'll be there with Iran and Turkey and some other nations, but they will not be leading the charge. So that tells us Iran militarily will be put in a subservient position. That needs to happen. So we'll be talking about that. So anyway, trying to understand the Israeli mindset. I know that the bodies of the dead are important to the Israeli people to bring them back, to bury them. But as Bible believing Christians, and here's the point of this, the great news from the New Testament is that the moment we die, the moment we're absent from the body, we die a physical death, we're immediately at home with the Lord. The real us is in the presence of the Lord. Our body may be dead, but our spirit, the real us, is in God's presence, conscious in a blissful situation, waiting for the resurrection of the dead. And so we can take comfort in the fact that though the body's in the grave and we do mourn, it's a huge loss, of course, for us in this life, but it's bittersweet because we know, according to 1 Thessalonians 4:18, we're to comfort one another with the words that there'll be a great reunion someday. So anyway, that's where we're at right now. Again, it's a bit of a head scratcher. You would have thought that Israel would at least demand the release of these two captives that were shown on Saturday in the car there in Gaza, two Israelis that are supposed to be part of the next phase. We'll let them go at least, and then we'll release the 600 prisoners for your continual denial of following the rules. But evidently, they don't negotiate that way. And let me tell you, a lot of people reading the comments are very, very mad. A lot of Israelis at their own government because of this. What kind of negotiation is this? So we'll see. We know how it's all going to turn out in the end. In the meantime, we don't know. And some days get to be real head scratchers like today. Anyway, I'm Don Stewart. Now, hopefully, too, one final thing, you got to watch the program yesterday, our Sunday messages. It's a two-part series. And every Sunday we do a message from Scripture we take from my book, my favorite 25 message that I preach. And this one was on prayer. Lord, teach us to pray. It's a very important message. It's a two-parter. A lot of people already have told me they found it very helpful. So if you haven't watched it, please do, because I think it's going to really help you in your life and your walk with the Lord. All right, I'm Don Stewart. If anything major comes up, we will bring it up to you. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow, God willing, at the same time. And as always, until then, may the Lord richly, richly bless.